Catholicism played out in those movies.
Right.
Because I think there's
that's
formal
just,
talk about it.
Just poor I shouldn't say poor,
right.
but that's very focused representation.
Right.
And so you almost think you're exempt from that because for my whole life, I thought, when I watched The Exorcist or, those other things, they always had like a crucifix. And I'm like, well, we don't have that in mind. So clearly I'm in the clear, ignorantly thinking like, oh, I'm good. But really it's always present. And in your case, it looks different.
Yeah.
I think it's just because it's not represented in media and in film. What I would consider regular, you would be like, why do you do that? That's weird.
Well, I would tell you, I tell people this because this is kind of where I was going with this. Is we're kind of talking about kind of religion and superstition and kind of mountain, rural beliefs in general. That's kind of almost what you see, at least in Appalachia, is you almost see this mixture of probably several different religions, with kind of the predominant one being some form of Christianity, right? Mixing with kind of general mountain superstition, coming together into this weird concoction of almost redneck Santeria, of kind of little bits and pieces of all kinds of different stuff coming together, right? And then, as we were kind of saying before we recorded, the end of this equation equals snake handling church, right?
Yep.
So you kind of see that. That's like a regular, I don't want to say that's regular, but they exist there, right? Within a 15-minute drive, 30-minute drive from where I grew up, like you could find a snake handling church.
Jeez.
Right? Because the Bible says you pick up snakes. So what do? We're going to pick up freaking rattlesnakes. We're going to wave them around their heads.
Oh my god!
And and there's always kind of like that grand idea, right? That your God's always right. So you get bit, you die. That's because you sin too much. Right? You get bit, you survive. Glory be to God.
Yep.
Right? Because you can't go to the hospital. That's one of the rules too. I forgot to say. You got to let that play out, right? Timber rattlers aren't fun. I'm just saying, Eastern Diamondbacks aren't fun. You probably don't want to sling one around your face.
Jeez.
But they do that. But so you see a lot of those kind of beliefs come together into that. So that form, the reason why I say that is because that snake handling church is a form of Pentecostalism, right? That's part of that belief, right? That it's almost a test of your purity towards God, right? But those churches believe very much in that casting out of demons, that it's because you have some form of demonic attachment that you're suffering, basically. And that's come from those beliefs throughout the mountains, right? Of that, if you're depressed and sad, your husband cheated on you, it's because you got demons. That's the problem. You got those demons. Just gotta get them fuckers out of you.
No,
real quick. There, we're gonna slap you in the head with some oil. Put our hands on you. It'll be all good.
Hold the snake for a little bit.
But so they did a lot of those kind of little things. The oil. They did prayer cloths. Prayer cloths was a big thing. So I don't know if you're familiar with prayer cloths, but they'd basically take.
Don't know anything about this.
Bits of cloth, right? My mom, I swear, I found one the other day in an old wallet. She would hide them in stuff. Talk about superstition, right? She'd hide them like in my shoes,
wow.
Stuff like this. But so they basically take that prayer cloth, these little squares of cloth, and they would basically anoint them with oil, and they would pray over them, and then they'd stash them, in different places. They'd have them in their houses, they'd have them in your cars. It's supposed to bring that safety towards you, I guess. Just wacky when you think about it when you say it out loud, but to them it's a very real thing.
Doesn't sound wacky to me at all. I completely get it.
Yeah.
That's.
I guess it's not. It's wacky when I reflect on it, I guess, is what I should say now. At the time, it seemed completely.
Completely.
But yeah, so I think you see that. You see a lot of those things that kind of mix together. And then now I think what's interesting is, again, I mentioned earlier that my sister's digging into more of the mountain lore there. And because you just can't find it anywhere. Nobody has recorded a lot of this stuff.
Your sister's story makes me nervous because there are times when have you ever just been talking about something and you kind of have that moment where you finally take a moment to breathe and you're like, or you have that freak out moment when you feel like you're onto something that you shouldn't be on. Yeah. Like you're like, I'm talking about something that I really shouldn't be talking about. Like, it's almost like that superstition part of like us, where it's just like you're inviting something in that you shouldn't be.
Right.
And I have a scary story of myself. It's not a scary story to somebody else, I think, because this is probably the most scared I've ever been in my life. But it's really just a my reflection of what was happening. So me and two of my best friends, we were, I want to say, freshmen in college, and we were back for break, summer break. And this is so we were just, old rural town, post high school or during high school. What do? You just go drive around.
Yeah.
Like you just go waste gas.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Spend time just to, hey, where's that road go? You just start driving down these roads, and
there's cruising around, there's teen pregnancies, and there's drugs or alcohol. Like that's and it's usually all three of those go together at some point.
And so why I focused on freshman year break is it was pre drinking. Mm-hmm. If it was the next summer, we would probably have been out drinking something. But that one, I remember we were just sitting out in the sand dune somewhere, and we're just basically laid out in the truck bed, just bullshit and talking. Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but we got on this notion about almost like aliens, of how we're not actually here on purpose, we're almost like an experimentation project of how we're just being watched. And when you're that far out in the boonies, you are seeing everything amplified, the stars and the moon was out, and so everything around you is very, it's just lit.
It's hard to describe to people. Mm-hmm. When you take people back, when I take Jarrell back to the mountains, and clear summer night is a perfect example. Winter seems even clearer, probably is for whatever reason. It's just the night, just crisp air, and you're laying there and you're staring up at the sky. And folks that don't understand that there you can actually watch shooting stars regularly. Right. It's there's I counted 30 of those tonight. These people have never seen any in their life because they've never been outside the city. So to your point, it's just you can see this kind of by natural light, by natural moonlight.
And so I don't really know what this is, but we reached this state of our conversation where we were hitting each other's tangents so well. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember exactly how we got to this point. Because we were kind of talking about I remember distinctly the aliens part. That's not what got me to where the thought process is. That was a stepping off point, and eventually I got to a point where I started talking about dreams that always happen. I noticed that and my dreams seem to usually be usually my way of telling myself I'm on the right track, because I'll end up I have deja vu. And I distinctly remember having dreams of why was I in that location? And I never get a location of where I'm at. I never know I was in Phoenix at the time. I just see this weird room. No joke, I had a dream about this 7-8 years ago. Wow. No joke. No freaking joke. I remember, but I didn't see you. I didn't see specific stuff. I just remember being in Albuquerque and waking up, and I was like, why am I staring at a corner of a brick room?
Right. Yeah.
That's so weird. And I remember just thinking just that distinctly. I mean, this is before you got all of your decor in here, and it was pretty bare, and you just had this bookshelf behind you. Right. And I never told you that till just now, because I just remembered that, actually. But, so stuff like that. And so that night, I just had this feeling, this remembering of a dream, that I remember being dropped off, because I didn't drive. My friends drove, and they dropped me off in front of my house. And, just a rural town, so they drop you off at your gate, your fence, and then you kind of walk a couple hundred yards to your house. Yep. And in my case, it was, a couple hundred yards, because, my grandparents' house was first, and then my house was after. And then so I would walk past my grandparents' house to get to mine. And in my dream, I'm walking to my house, and I'm right as I'm getting to my grandparents' house, and I just hear this big pop. Yeah. And all of a sudden I slowly spiral, and I'm looking up at the stars, and then I touch my chest, and I just feel really warm, and then I look up at my hands, and they're just covered in blood. Oh. And I'm like, what is happening? And then that was I distinctly remember in my dream that was me dying. Yeah. And I was like, that's how it ends. And that night, when me and my friends were laying there with our backs up, looking up at the sky, that same exact sky came at me, just like how I remember this brick wall. Yeah. And I was so scared. I told my friends it was almost like you're trying to change history. I'm just call me the worst thing you could have ever think in your life. Like, can we, like, go crash this vehicle right now? Like, can we just do something so drastic that there's no way it would align with the reality that this would have happened? Because if I'm staring at this sky right now, there's no way that when I drive back to my house and I walk to my house after you guys drop me off, that doesn't play out.
Right.
And it probably took us a half hour to get from the boonies back to my house, and we rushed. And my friends, like, they saw the terror in my eyes, and they were just like, Ian isn't just like...
Yeah, this is...
He's not just saying he's scared. Like, he is legitimately scared for his life. And there's only been a few times that my friend has looked at me the way he looked at me, and he just looked at me like, oh, shit, we need to get you home now.
Yeah.
And we all got in my vehicle, we drove home, and I was just talking about it, and I was just mad. I'm like, we shouldn't have been talking about aliens. We shouldn't have been talking about dreams. Like, we're always told not to talk about this stuff. We're always told this. We're always told that. And I was just, like, mad and yelling, and I was just like, and this is how it fucking... I was convinced. I was convinced. And the way that we altered the timeline... I remember we pulled up to the fence, and the way that we, quote-unquote, altered the timeline was we sat there for like 5 minutes, and like nobody pushed me out to go. Nobody said, all right, man, you gotta go, even though it was like 1 a.m, because I was legit convinced. I can't tell you, it makes no sense, and that's why I said it doesn't really sound like a scary story, but that was like one of the, I think, the scariest I've ever been in my life. It was almost like in Kill Bill, when she gives him the whole thing to the heart, and he has to take 5 steps and he's done. Like, that's how I felt. And just like, guys, it was nice knowing you. And they were all convinced too. Like, at no point were they like, well, you're overreacting, you're this. And one of my friends was just like, what if we just watch you the whole time? And if something happens, we'll yell and we'll make sure everything's okay. And as I started walking, I remember, like, as he was telling me, like, where I was like, just raise your voice. He was like, what? I was like, just raise your voice. And I just, like, opened the door, and I closed the door, and the window was rolled down. And I was like, just keep talking to me, man. And then he was just like, so what? And then so I was just, like, carrying a conversation. Like, so we'll see you in the morning, see you tomorrow. And I just kept walking. And once I got past that point that I remembered in my dream, I fucking booked it to my front door. Yeah. Fucking booked it. Yeah. And I went home, and I just remember, like... And I was a man at this point. Yeah. A young adult at least. I slept with my parents, no joke. Yeah. No joke. I told my mom, like, don't ask me any questions. Don't just please scoot over. Yeah. And that was it.
That's one thing too that you're sitting there talking about, that you're talking about dreams, and that's one thing that I've always heard, even through kind of the more religious side of my family, was the importance of dreams and the interpretation of dreams and those things. I've heard that forever. Like ever and ever and ever and and ever, and so because even with that was an element of kind of my kind of religious upbringing too. Was like people would talk about, like, I had a dream. They openly talk about that in church.
100%.
Like, I had a dream about this, and I don't know what it means. Like, they would go to a pastor to, like, figure out what the dream meant and what they should kind of do next, and kind of those next steps. And it's wacky to me because I have not been a vivid dreamer for a long time. Quite a while.
Yeah, me too.
And so I have done this thing where I've really started to become more, I've really focused on mindfulness so far this month. And I've really been focused in on kind of, here's because my hippity dippity stuff, but really focused in on different styles of meditation and chanting and like stuff like that. And like really kind of like really diving into that for like a half an hour out of every day.
Wow.
For my blood pressure more than anything else, right? And since I've started doing that, I've had some of the most realistic and vivid dreams that I have ever had in my entire life. Like sheer terror kind of dreams in some certain senses.
Too much.
It's like, the only way that I can put it is like, I had a dream the other night without getting into too many specifics because it's still kind of tender for me. It's like staring face to face with your own mortality.
Oh God!
It's like that. It's like that ultimate gut check. Like, I had a dream the other night. It's like the ultimate gut check, kind of similar to that situation, which made me think about that. Where it's like, dude, you're gonna fucking die. That's the dream, right? There's no worse dream than that, I think, than waking up and being like it was one of those situations.